We're good to start.
Okay, I'm just waiting for my computer clock to click over to 8:30. As I've said before, the last 30 seconds always seem to be the longest. Oh, and there it goes. Okay, we will now call the meeting of the Administration and Projects Committee meeting to order. Please give your attention to this short video.
Due to COVID-19, this meeting will be conducted as a Zoom meeting pursuant to the provisions of Assembly Bill 361, which suspends certain requirements of the Brown Act. This meeting is being live streamed on the CCTA website. The chair will call upon members, staff, and other speakers by name. Please speak clearly and state your name before giving comments or remarks. Persons participating via Zoom with their cameras enabled are reminded that their activities are visible to viewers. Members participating by Zoom wishing to speak should physically raise their hand and unmute their mic when called upon. Members should mute their mics when done speaking. Citizens participating by Zoom wishing to speak should use the Raise Hand feature or dial *9 if participating via phone, and the chair or staff will call upon them at the appropriate time. Citizens will have 3 minutes to speak. After 3 minutes, staff will lower their hand and mute their mic. Participants via phone will be called upon by the last 4 digits of their phone number. It is requested that public speakers state their names and organization, but providing such information is voluntary. Written public comments received in accordance with the teleconferencing special notice for public comment guidelines are printed on the meeting agenda. If authors of the written correspondence would like to speak, they should raise their hand and the chair will call upon them at the appropriate time. All written correspondence received after that and during the meeting will be entered into the record. A roll call vote will be taken for all action items. Thank you for participating in a meeting of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority.
Okay, great. Thank you. Christina, will you conduct the roll call?
Yes, Chair Nowak,
Here.
Vice Chair Butt,
Here.
Commissioners Arnrich,
Here.
Geringer,
Here.
and Thorpe.
I do not see him yet.
I don't see him either.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is public comment. Members of the public are invited to address the committee regarding any item that is not listed on the agenda. Please refer to the teleconferencing special notice for public comment guidelines. Christina, have we received any written public comments?
Oh, we have not.
Okay. Is there anyone wishing to speak during public comment on any item that's not on the agenda? So please raise your hand. I don't see anybody.
Don't either.
All right, so we'll close public comment. And the next item on the agenda is the consent calendar. Are there any changes, comments from the committee? Does anybody want to pull any item? If anyone would like to speak from the public, please raise your hand. I assume we didn't have any written comments on the consent.
Correct. No written comments.
Okay, do I have a motion?
I'll move approval of the consent calendar, Geringer.
Second.
Great, we have a motion by Geringer and a second by Arnrich. May we have the roll call vote, please?
Chair Nowak,
Yes?
Vice Chair Butt,
Yes.
thank you. Commissioners Arnrich,
Yes.
Geringer,
Yes.
and Thorpe. So the motion passes with members present.
Great, thanks. Next item on the agenda is an informational item introduced by Lindsay to provide an update on legislation.
Good morning, commissioners. I know that Mark Watts was teasing you with some news about what's happening at the state level. So maybe we'll actually start with the state update first and get some of the bad news out of the way before we jump to what's happening at the federal level. So Mark, do you want to provide your update?
Yes, sorry, I was flipping around on the screen. Hi, good to see you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you, Chair and committee members and staff. I was going to talk about three things today. First, kind of an update on bills, in particular, real briefly, the gas tax deferral bills, and then two of the bills that we talked about or were prepared to talk about at the last time we met. And then finally, a budget update to wrap this all up. So on the gas tax deferrals, there were three bills, AB 1626, which was never set. It would have limited the fuel adjustment to 2% each year. And I think the reason the author didn't ask for it to be set because the other two bills that she saw were a little more rigorous in their opposition to the adjustment. So AB 1638 by Mr. Kiley would have suspended the fuel tax increase July 1st for 6 months and then backfill it with some general fund. The Assembly Transportation Committee didn't like that bill. They gutted it and amended it to place a tax on oil supplier profits. The author didn't like that, so he maneuvered on the floor to have the bill dropped. So those two are gone by the wayside. The third bill was heard yesterday, and that's Senate Bill 1156 by Senator Grove from Central Valley. It failed yesterday in Senate Governance and Finance Committee. So all three of the legislative efforts that were underway to suspend the gas tax have fallen by the wayside. I will note that there is a caucus of problem solvers in the Assembly that includes some moderate Democrats and some Republicans, and they've offered some ideas. They're not getting any traction, but they are restoring or seeking to restore, from a legislative perspective, some limit on the gas tax adjustment. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But right now, the legislative threats and vehicles are behind us. The second item I wanted to discuss in the area of legislation, there's two bills, AB 2237 by Friedman. So you took an opposed position on it. It was amended in subsequent to that to require that each regional transportation improvement program, the regional part of each STIP, that it be consistent with the most recently prepared sustainable community strategy and the CTC and state climate goals. There's been a lot of discussion and a lot of pushback on this. It was later amended to require each transportation agency or CTC in Southern California to rank all projects and prioritize them. And then the ranked projects must not induce VMT growth. So that's a radical change in policy. It also was further amended, almost a direct attack on self-help county taxes to require local sales taxes agencies to prepare a report on their program, a very comprehensive report on the project types and the like. And then it was going to, if it stays in, the CTC would be required to analyze each report to ensure that the projects that are in that report from the sales tax expenditure plans would be aligned with state climate goals, including CAPTI, SB 32, and the state transportation plan. And finally, there's language in that bill now that says no project can be funded by a local agency if it includes a project that does not align with state climate goals. So there's a lot of discussion going on. We've had some very good progress in working with the author's office to start thinking about how to back off some of this. I've organized a primer, I guess they call it, on how a sales tax plan is put together. What are the protections for the voters? How can you change the plans? And I'm working with Will Kempton to educate the author's staff on that to see if we can start moving the bill in the other direction. If it doesn't, then I think the industry, along with self-help counties and RTPAs and CalCog, will come out fully in opposition. The other measure I wanted to briefly talk about was AB 2438. And it would have required, or would still require the CTC to upgrade and revise the guidelines for the very large programs under the guidance of the CTC, including SHOP and others, to ensure that they too, these major program guidelines are aligned with the administration's CAPTI, Climate Action Plan for Transportation Infrastructure, AB 32 and SB 375. That bill did pass the Assembly Committee because the chair was the author. But discussions likewise are heavily underway on a weekly basis with the author's staff. And they've been requested to consider taking out local streets and roads from the bill's oversight guideline requirement, the SHOP, and anything under mass asset management as well. And also to constrain, this is very technical, but to constrain the California Transportation Plan financially. So it's not an aspirational objective, but it's more of a realistic roadway or road plan for the future. So those two bills are really consuming a lot of energy and time up here. At this point in time, as I indicated, there's very, very deep conversations going on to adjust this to be more palatable and acceptable and still meet some of the author's goals. I was going to talk next briefly about the state budget and what's going on there. So there had been somewhat of a hiatus towards the middle to late April, as the budget subcommittees were preparing for the May revise and getting in shape for that. But in the meantime, in late March, the governor did put on the table an expanded relief package for Californians, but it did it would have provide, if enacted, it would provide incentive grants to rail and transit agencies for free transit, among other things, but it also retained his January call for suspending the adjustment on July 1st to the fuel cap, since that requires lead time to do, and that lead time was estimated to be the 1st of May, in order to provide all the different folks involved in the chain of flow of the tax revenues, including the motorist advance warning that was happening. That doesn't look like it's going to happen at this point in time. So we'll have to see if there's any more shenanigans. I hate to use that term in terms of trying to put that on the table, but right now it seems safely behind us. The last two things in the budget arena was the Senate proposal from late April. It's a major transportation plan, and not much in the way of details is available. It does propose a $20 billion plus up over 4 years above what the governor has proposed in his January package of $9 billion for transportation. So we're waiting for the details on that. A number of folks testified in general support for what the Senate is proposing yesterday in the Senate subcommittee hearing. In addition, the Assembly more recently announced, I think that was maybe Friday, their own major transportation or major state budget blueprint, within which they had what they call a sizable allocation for transportation, transit, and active transportation. Probably most importantly, because this has been what's held up the movement in transportation, extra transportation revenues from the surplus, has been the high-speed rail debate between the Assembly and the Senate. But they now are declaring that they've developed a realistic and accountable path to get high-speed rail to begin operations. So that seems to be a signal that the budget and the budget increases and budget allocations from the surplus may be really seriously on the table this time around, because that has been the hinge pin has been the high-speed rail appropriation. So with that, I'll bring my overview to a close and be prepared if there's any questions.
Any questions on Mark's comments? Lots of things to keep an eye on, obviously. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Lindsay?
Yeah, Gus and Maddie from our federal advocates, Ty Ginsburg and Associates. I'm not sure which one of you is giving the update or if you're tag teaming this morning, so feel free to get started.
Hey, good morning, everyone. As I'm sure you're aware, the fiscal year 23 appropriations process is well underway. The Senate Appropriations Transportation Subcommittee just had a hearing last week, a week ago today, with Secretary Buttigieg about upcoming administration priorities for funding projects in the fiscal 23 year. So we're monitoring that as the bill gets drafted and moves along the process. Just wanted to kind of give that lay of the land, but I think the big ticket item on CCTA's plate at the federal level right now is pursuing a mega project grant. That's one of the new programs from the infrastructure bill. It was created to be funded at a $1 billion level. This is for major regional projects around the country. Highway and bridge projects and also certain public transportation projects are eligible components of this to advance regional economic mobility and safety benefits. Due to the great leadership and working relationships of the CCTA team there, the Metropolitan Transportation Commission has endorsed the Innovate 680 project to pursue, I believe it's approximately $395 million to fully see through that Innovate 680 project. As everyone is, I'm sure, well aware, this will run the gamut of activities from zero emission buses, building out shared mobility hubs, pursuing an express lane network, and also developing tech tools to encourage better sharing across different transportation modes, as well as advancing mobility options for everyone along the corridor. This is obviously going to be a very competitive process given the size and the attention that will attract. But CCTA has a great story, we believe. Director Tim Hill is going to be coming to pound the pavement here in Washington in a few weeks and advocate support amongst our congressional delegation. Lindsay's already done a great job of coordinating with MTC and our congressional partners as we're developing support letters for this and weighing in with Secretary Buttigieg on this effort. So that's the major thing on our agenda right now. If anybody has other questions for the federal level, happy to answer those.
Any questions from committee members?
Just a comment. This is
Yep,
great.
no,
I mean, this is extraordinary opportunity. I mean, this would be the single largest. This is actually bigger than what we got for, can't remember what they called them, but for the Caldecott Tunnel back in that relief package. So this is a big lift to get MTC to agree with something we're doing, and something that's so important and the first of its kind. So, wow, pull out all the stops on this, whatever it takes. Let's do it. And whatever support we need from whomever, whether it be the mayor's conference or whatever, we ought to throw this one at this. This is a fundamentally change opportunity that we have here to make a difference. So thank you.
any other comments? No, great, and I concur, no. Mayor Butt's the chair right now, so maybe we can get him moving on the mayor's conference to do something since he's on this committee anyway.
Just tell me what you want and I'll make it happen.
All right, there we go. That's what I like.
Well, let's do this, Tom. Let's get a letter. Tim or Lindsay, if you can provide a letter draft, and then we can get off to Gary Pokorny who's our executive director there. He can draft it and we can get it on our agenda right away.
Okay.
We will have that to you.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Thanks. Christina, do we get any public comments on this item?
No, we did not.
Okay, any other public comments? I don't see any other hands raised. Okay, thank you, Gus, Maddie, Jack, Mark. That was great. A lot of good information today, so thank you. Next item on the agenda is an action item presented by Hisham seeking authorization to execute agreement number 582 with Global Traffic Technologies, LLC, funding agreement number 08C.06 with the City of Walnut Creek, and funding agreement number 08C.07 with the City of Concord for Central Transit Signal Priority System implementation services. Is Hisham here?
Yes. Good morning, Madam Chair.
There.
Thank you for the introduction. Good morning. I'm happy to present this item. Hope you can hear me well and see my slide.
Yep.
Great. So we are asking for your approval to execute the contract with GTT as well as the funding agreements with Walnut Creek and Concord to start the implementation of this unique project. Transit agencies have long implemented transit signal priority using optical readers, which require equipment on the bus as well as equipment on the signal mast arms. The buses have to be at a certain location in that type of system so the reader on the signal can connect with the bus. What we are trying to implement here is a centralized TSP system, transit signal priority system, that avoids installation of additional equipment on the bus or at the traffic signal. We want to implement conditional priority, where priority to the bus is given only when certain conditions are met, like if the bus is behind schedule or if it is at least 30% full, for example. That way we're optimizing person throughput through the intersection without unnecessarily delaying other traffic. We have been working with our partners to implement the project for some time now. CCTA role will be to hold the contract to deploy, operate, and maintain the TSP system for the next 4 years. MTC is the funding agency for the project. They also manage the engineering contract, the system engineering contract. The cities of Walnut Creek and Concord is where we're going to be implementing the project. They will ensure their traffic signal controllers are upgraded and the communication channels are in place. And last but not least, County Connection is the beneficiary from this system as they will run the transit service in both cities. By the way, this will be the first TSP implementation in the County Connection service area. The goals of the project are to improve transit reliability and schedule adherence. That will make transit more competitive and hopefully increase transit ridership along these routes. With less stops, we are hoping to reduce fuel use and emissions. And if this system works, we do plan to expand it to other cities as well as other bus routes. This slide shows the project area in the city of Concord. There are 2 bus routes, Route 20 and 15, where will benefit from the TSP system. And the area covers 35 intersections. And the decision on which routes to include was mainly made by our partners at County Connection and the cities based on existing ridership, on-time performance, as well as other factors. This slide shows the project area in the city of Walnut Creek. It covers Route 4 and 5 and 31 intersection. In terms of funding, the project is funded by the IDEA grant. There were 2 separate awards made to CCTA as well as the city of Walnut Creek, they totaling about $1.2 million. Because County Connection serves both cities, we combined the 2 projects early on with CCTA taking the lead on it. The funding will be used for deployment for the operation and maintenance of the system for 3 years, as well as for necessary upgrades to traffic signal controllers. We also have some money there for consultant help, as well as a study at the end to evaluate the success of the project. This slide shows one of two options on how the system was envisioned to work. Under this option, option A, the TSV system will communicate basically with the CleverCAD, that's the county dispatch system, county connection dispatch system, to get information about the bus location, schedule, how many people on the bus, and so on, as well as then communicates with the traffic signal controllers through the city traffic management system. The decision to grant priority to the bus is made at the traffic signal controller itself to ensure that it's based on what's actually happening at the intersection. Under the second option, the system communicates directly with the bus, bypassing basically the CleverCAD system. It gets the location again, the schedule, and the occupancy from the bus directly. And the decision to grant priority is still made at the traffic signal controller. We found out through the RFP process that option B, this option is actually the cheaper and faster way to go because it does avoid unnecessarily upgrades. Does avoid necessary upgrades to the CleverCAD software and equipment that County Connection currently have. In terms of the RFP and the selection of the vendor for the project, we did issue the RFP back in September 2021. We had 6 good proposals, and we held the interviews in December and finalized the ranking in January. GTT was ranked the highest by a panel of 6 people. The GTT solution was the most cost-effective among the group as it relies on the existing equipment on the bus, as well as available data from the internet on the schedule and the occupancy. This is the criteria that we used to evaluate the proposals and the vendors. And in terms of the schedule, we anticipate the project will take approximately 9 to 12 months to implement. It does require close coordination with the cities of Walnut Creek and Concord in their current effort to upgrade the traffic signal controllers. So with that, we are seeking your authorization to execute agreement number 582 with GTT for an amount not to exceed $245,937, as well as the 2 funding agreements with the cities of Walnut Creek and Concord. Be happy to answer any questions.
Chair Nowak, you're on mute.
Thank you. Tom?
Hisham, I think you mentioned you were looking at doing this in other locations. And I know we've been talking about it at WICTAC forever for San Pablo Avenue going through several cities. Is this kind of a prototype that would be expanded to other places? And
Yes, that's the idea. What we currently have on San Pablo Avenue is the old optical system, TSV system. This is hopefully a much more efficient way. The central TSV system we're trying to implement requires basically uses the existing equipment as long as your signal controllers are upgraded to implement this. So yes, the goal is to implement it countywide with the approval of the cities as well as the service providers. So yes, this is a pilot.
thank you.
Newell?
I covered up my button. Hey, Sean, thanks for the presentation. First of all, it's a great idea. Glad that we're, some of our cities are eligible for this funding. I really had a question on the technical point. The main contract here, I was reading through it. Who wrote that contract? Is that a standard contract from somewhere? That's the longest contract I think I've ever seen.
Yes, we actually worked with our legal counsel to develop a template. This is a unique project. None of our existing templates worked for it. So we actually had to develop a template. And we worked closely with, of course, David and his partner to get this done.
I just have to tell you, I mean, it's a type of contract that you have to bring knowledge to it to understand what it means. If you read it face value, I'm not in that business, so I read it for face value. That's a complicated contract. I would hope that we trust this consultant, see how it goes, and make adjustments for if we do this again. I'm just concerned about a contract that has that much. Is it a destiny to success or is it a destiny to failure? And I hope it's the first. I just worry about that contract. The subcontracts on the funding agreements, those are pretty straightforward. But we've covered a lot in there. And maybe this is so unique you have to do that. But in my professional career, I've never had a contract. I did $1 billion project in a foreign country and never saw a contract that way. So I just worry about what we're trying to accomplish or what we were worried about. So I'll leave it to you. You guys are the experts, but just an outside opinion. So.
Okay. Tim?
Hey, good morning, everyone. I just wanted to add a little bit of context to this. You've kind of heard us talk a lot about this countywide connected signal system, and part of that, we're running basically several pilots that are kind of in parallel or conjunction with the development of that overall signal system. And to Vice Chair Butt's point, this is a pilot. And what we're trying to do is run several pilots. One you might be familiar with the automated driving system grant, in terms of being able to do better vehicle and pedestrian detection and how we can coordinate that with our Vision Zero goals as well as connected vehicles. And so we're running a few pilots, and the goal is, and you'll hear about this item here in the near future at a future meeting, but I'm sure you've heard a lot about the OBAG 3 program and the framework that we're putting together for that. And half of those dollars are going to go to this countywide connected signal system. And so the vision is that as these pilots hopefully will be successful, and I'm confident that they will be successful, that we will actually expand those pilots as part of that overall countywide connected signal system. And so it'll be obviously optimizing traffic flows, one goal of a signal system, but having these additional add-ons in terms of transit signal priority systems, connected vehicle systems, Vision Zero, those are those add-on systems that we're talking about in terms of the connected signal system. So, and I think the other thing, Hisham, I wanted to ask you a question, because I thought something that was really unique about this concept is the ability to know how many people are in the bus and how we're prioritizing the bus. I didn't hear that come through in your presentation. And so what's really unique about this project is that we're not just prioritizing empty buses. We're only prioritizing buses that have a certain amount of people in them. And so I think that's a really unique aspect to this project, as we're looking to making sure that people are now, hey, why is this bus going by me and there's no one in it, And so I think that's something really unique. And that's why that CAD clever system, the County Connection, we can know how many people are inside the bus, and Hisham, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's like 50%. So we're only going to prioritize buses that are 50% full for the project.
Thanks, Tim. Yes, this is conditional priority. This is not your typical transit signal priority project. You only give priority when certain conditions are met, like if the project is behind schedule or if there are a certain number of people. We kept these parameters flexible. We haven't decided yet whether it's 50% the bus full or 30%. That will be decided by the team as we implement the project, and they definitely can be changed by the project team if they don't work out. So these will be parameters that can be changed.
So how do you see it rolling out if this pilot is successful? It sounds like you have to do it city by city or route by route. That piece I'm a little unclear on how that's going to roll out.
Most likely it's going to be rolled out route by route based on if the route currently has great on-time performance, maybe TSP is not needed, but this could be a tool where you have routes that are just getting too much delays at the signalized intersections. So this will help them achieve that on-time performance or improve on-time performance.
And you'll find that out from the individual transit agencies, or?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Well, it'd be interesting to see the results of this pilot.
This is very exciting for us. It's a unique project, and we're going to do everything to make sure it is a successful implementation.
Yeah, and maybe just one additional comment. This is another example of CCTA kind of stepping into that O&M role as part of this TSP project as a pilot. When we were working with the transit operators, working with MTC, working with the cities, no one really wanted to kind of take on this additional responsibility to operate this cloud TSP system. And so this is where CCTA is kind of stepping in and taking in that role of working with these different entities and integrating this thing together to get the benefit of transit signal priority systems. And so this is really a great pilot because it kind of checks the boxes of some of the things that we want to do in the future in terms of O&M integration, working with more closely with our transit partners on the overall project.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments from committee members? Okay, Christina, did we receive any written public comments on this item?
No, we did not.
And are there anybody on has a public comment? I don't see any. Okay. I am looking for a motion on this. Teresa?
I'm happy to move the item, the staff recommendation on the item. I'm happy to read it as well. Happy to move the
I think they've got it.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Garner and a second from Arnrich. Can we have the roll call vote, please?
Yes, Chair Nowak,
Yes?
Vice Chair Butt,
Yes,
Commissioners Arnrich,
Yes.
Geringer,
Aye.
and Thorpe. I thought I saw him on here.
He's on. Lamar?
Aye.
Excellent, thank you. The motion passes unanimously.
Great, thank you. The next item on the agenda is an informational item introduced by Hisham as well to provide an update on the draft 2022 Measure J strategic plan. Hisham.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a very short presentation on this item. Today, we're asking for your comments on the draft 2022 Measure J strategic plan. The final strategic plan will be brought to you in July for approval after we incorporate any comments you may have today. The draft 2022 Measure J strategic plan is the 7th update since the first one you adopted in 2007. As you know, that we update the strategic plan every 2 to 3 years to determine when and how much to appropriate in Measure J funds to different projects. We take into consideration our latest debt service cost estimates on bonds, as well as the latest projections of our Measure J sales tax revenues. The highlights of the 2022 strategic plan were summarized in the staff report in your packet. As you may recall, we started working on this update back in September 2021. At the time, you provided us with directions on key issues that guided the plan. The most important one was the revenue forecast. As you recall, HDL presented their updated revenue forecast at the meeting. The red line on this chart shows what we were projecting in the 2019 strategic plan, while the solid black line shows the updated projection that you adopted for the 2022 strategic plan. As you can see from the slope of the lines, our new projections assume slower growth moving forward compared to the one in the last strategic plan. However, despite that, and because in the last 3 years our revenues were much better than what we anticipated, the overall Measure J revenue is still the same as the last strategic plan at $2.588 billion. In the process of updating the strategic plan, we identified about $18 million in Measure J savings from completed projects. The majority of these savings came from the Caldecott Tunnel project, southbound HOV express lane projects on 680, and to a lesser extent from Highway 4. We did not realize any savings in this cycle on projects in West County. That's not unexpected because West County had the least amount of Measure J funds for capital projects in the expenditure plan. As you recall, WICTAC basically in West County chose to put most of their money into the programs in Measure J as opposed to capital projects. We came to you in February of this year to seek your approval on how to program these savings, and you approved the reprogramming of these savings in the same subregions where they were realized and to the projects you see in the slide. That basically allowed us to maintain subregional equity, which is critical in our expenditure plan, and at the same time restore some of the funding that we had to remove on most of these projects in the last strategic plan. Because the authority board chose to issue bonds against our future revenues 12 years ago, back in 2009, when Measure J started, we were able to deliver those projects early and under budget. And that strategy allowed us to leverage our Measure J funds when interest rates were low and when the construction bid environment was favorable. At this time, 70% of our Measure J projects in the strategic plan are constructed or under construction. The program of projects in Appendix A of the plan, as well as the project's fact sheets in Appendix B, reflect that. For me, that's the most satisfying part of updating the strategic plan, which is stamping constructed on these fact sheets. While we're not anticipating issuing new bonds at this time, we will continue to look for opportunities to refinance our existing bonds to further cut our debt service costs. The plan, however, does reflect the refinancing we did in June 2021, which totally eliminated the swap and reduced our debt service cost. In the 2022 strategic plan, we have a total of about $754 million programmed in Measure J over the life of the measure for capital projects. At the start of this fiscal year, $689 million of that has already been expended, or about 92%. We are looking to spend another $47 million over the next 6 years. And that's not a lot compared to what we've been spending at the peak of the program. I want to end with this slide, which summarizes the 2022 strategic plan. It shows the revenue expected, the period covered, the number of projects programmed, and so on. I want to confirm that the plan does reflect the request by Transpac to reprogram some of the BART funds from the Walnut Creek TOD to the Fairgates replacement project. It also reflects the reprogramming of Measure J funds between different projects in the town of Danville at the request. Looking ahead, we do have several projects that have secured non-Measure J funds and are being advanced by Measure J. For example, we're using $8 million in Measure J funds in lieu of RM3 to deliver the future phases of the 684 interchange. That basically, if we hadn't done that, we would have risked about $18 million in secured trade corridor enhancement program, SB1 funding. The strategic plan anticipates that we will continue to do that type of advancement on other projects like Innovate 680. And because of that, we do anticipate our cash flow to be constrained in fiscal year 2024. However, that could change, of course, if our revenues come in much better, or if, for example, the RM3 legal litigation is resolved before then, or if the STIP funds, for example, become available sooner than anticipated. Fortunately, we did accumulate enough cash in some of the Measure J programs, like the Ferry program and the TLC, to help us get through that period. But as an added security, the plan is recommending that you hold off programming the next cycle of the TLC and the Ped Bike program for a couple more years to give us an additional cash cushion. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions. Stop sharing.
Are there any questions, comments? No?
Hisham, thanks for that. It's interesting to look back and see where we've been, and that we've done a lot. And can you refresh for all of us, are we on, particularly the program side, are we forced every year to expend all the money based on that formula, even if it's above our projections? And I know we did a little bit when things were dropping, how we cut back, but and the reason why I'm asking that is just as we do look at that 2024, and it's projected for the next year or so to see sales tax way above what we originally anybody had projected, as we've seen over the past 2 years. And what was in our consent calendar today, you see those projections. So can you refresh us? Do we have the ability to take the number, hold it as almost as though it's a reserve to help smooth out our cash flow?
Yes, Mr. Arnich. There are two types of programs that we have in Measure J. Some that basically get allocated directly to the cities and the transit operators. And those basically are a fixed percentage of whatever we
no matter what. Okay.
Yeah, no matter what. And then there are the programs like for the similar to the TLC and the Ped Bike, where we accumulate funds and then we issue a call for projects to spend these funds. And that's where our safety valve is basically. If, for example, we end up with a substantial drop in our revenues, unexpected, then what we can do, we can delay these programs. And if for some reason we just don't have money to do them, the board will have the ability to say, okay, well, these type of projects could be funded by other sources we control, like the STIP, and make that trade to keep them basically whole.
Right. So those are, okay, I appreciate that. So really our only discretionary funds are in that TLC area now. Okay, no, that's great. Thank you for that.
Tim, did you have
a question? So thanks.
Tim, did you have a follow-up to that? Then I'll go to you, Tom, but.
Yeah, I did actually. So Commissioner Armitage, you actually bring up a really good point, and Brian and I have actually been talking about that. We've been talking about, because every year we in our annual budget, we set a budget for sales tax, right? And so based on that budget in sales tax for programs, there's an expectation that we would allocate the program dollars based on that budget. So for example, in the transit programs, you know, let's say we're projecting $100 million and X amount goes to transit operators. And so, but if our sales tax revenue exceeds $100 million, then that difference, my preference would be to put that in an actual reserve type program to actually save that for future years, because we're in this unprecedented moment where our sales tax are just exceeding our projections. And so Brian and I and Hisham have been talking about that delta could because the trans operators are expecting to get X amount based on what we budgeted that year. And that's how we do our program allocations, is based on the annual budget. So if we do exceed our annual budget projections, then we could potentially take those amounts and put them in a reserve, but they have to stay inside those programs. We can't go spend them on other programs. They have to stay inside those programs. And then we can put those dollars in for, you know, for future years or budget for future years, is potentially when sales tax might dip. I think we all know we're going to be heading into a recession soon. And so, so I think those are some of the things that Brian and Hisham and I are talking about, exactly what you're talking about in terms of maybe thinking about creating some sort of reserve program based on exceeding of our annual projections.
Right, because in the past, we did a true up at the end of the year.
Exactly.
The true up would then distribute. Yeah, I think it's worth it. You know, we got to make sure that from a legal point of view, from our original Measure J documentation and what we put to the voters. But I think it's a wise thing to do. We should look at it. I think it's prudent behalf of our taxpayers to look at that because we still have a mission till the end of the life of this. And we don't want to have to cut back so much that it's just, you know, it's ineffective. And so.
Exactly. So to your point, exactly. So instead of doing those true ups at the end of the year, we would just take those true ups and put it in a reserve. Yeah.
Okay, Tom?
Wait, how does Tim know we're heading into a recession? Should I go out and sell my stocks today?
It's too late. It's already down 1,000 points.
Yeah, did anyone see that today?
Yeah, it's already down 1,000. So
No, I just wanted to say the most important slide on that deck is that one that shows the 1 to 4.1 leverage. You know, that's just an amazing accomplishment.
Yeah.
And you know, just think where we would be if we hadn't taken that on and completed those projects. So I think that's a huge story just in and of itself.
okay, thank you, Tom. Tim, you still have your hand up. Are you making additional? No, I'm just double checking. Any additional comments from the committee? No. Okay. Do we have any written public comments?
No, we've received no written public comments.
Okay, and anybody from the public wishing to speak, raise your hand. I don't think we have any. Okay, great. We will move on then to correspondence and communications. We have none, I believe. Chair's comments. I don't have any comments today. Any comments or report? Oh.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Chair
Sure.
Noack. We needed to make a motion on the Measure J item.
Oh,
I thought that was just an update.
I just thought that was an
Our
update as well. I have it as an informational item.
Okay. Hisham, it's just information. Can you confirm pretty please? Okay,
Yes, we
you.
received the comments. This is fine. Thank you.
okay.
Okay. all
Sorry
right.
about that.
Great. All right. Back to comments from any committee members? No? Okay. Executive staff comments. Tim?
Yeah, I just a quick update for all of you. Yesterday afternoon, I attended a meeting with MTC staff to get an update on the revisions to the transit-oriented community policy. And so they unveiled, you know, their new revisions to the policy yesterday. So it's actually going to the planning directors meeting on Friday, and it's going to be going to MTC committee the following Friday. But There has been some revisions. They actually removed the bus component altogether from the TOC policy. And so now the TOC policy is now going to focus on just fixed rail. So BART, ACE, commuter rail, Capital Corridor. And that's probably the biggest change, which I think is significant. I think it's something that we asked for, was to really think about how this may impact transit or bus service, especially as we're looking at the integrated transit plan. That was probably the most significant change. They did reduce the densities too for what would be all along our fixed rail. So for example, BART, it used to be 7,500 units per acre. And so now they're looking at 50 to 75 acres.
75, oh, you mean 75 to 100 per
Yeah,
acre?
so the original.
Oh, phew, you had Teresa and I having a heart attack there in 75. Teresa especially, I don't have any
75
BART.
to 100. So the original policy was 75 to 100 dwelling units per net acre, and they've reduced it to 50 to 75.
Okay.
I know I'm usually very quiet, Tim, but
No, I just saw Teresa gulp and I thought, oh boy, okay. I thought you said 7,500 and I thought, oh my God.
Yeah, so they did reduce the acres a little bit. They also made a modification where the maximum floor height or the maximum building height would be anywhere from 3 to 4 stories for some of those communities along BART. So we're going to be taking a closer look at this. They just literally, I actually took snapshots of the slides yesterday. They haven't distributed that information, so we're taking a closer look at it. But I just felt like it was good to give an update of kind of what's happening there on the TOC policy.
Did they have any discussion between that and the arena allocations? That was, big point that we had made was, here many cities are trying to deal with their arena allocation and adding additional density along the, as part of the TOD was going to be. Was there any sort of, how do you put those two things together? No.
There hasn't been any discussion around that. The other big question that I asked, or we asked yesterday, was around density bonuses and how that fits into these rates. And so we would like to have the density bonuses actually be part of these rates. So that way it's 25 to 50. And that way, if you have a 50% density bonus, you can meet the rate. And so that might make it a little more flexible too, in terms of meeting the policy.
Teresa, do you have a question?
no, that was one, the density bonus piece was, but then the timing is that's going to planning. And so, I mean, when we can see the latest version, we mere mortals, when do you have a time of that?
So the draft is supposed to be out this Friday when they publish the packet for the committee. So once I have a copy of it, I'll send it out to the board.
Okay, thank you.
That's it, Tim? Anything else?
That's it. Thanks.
Okay. Any other business? All right. With that, we will adjourn to our next meeting. Proposed for June 2nd. I will be on a train going to the East Coast. So Tom, you may have to chair that one. I apologize, but I'm doing a 3-day getaway by taking the train across country.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, it is fun. I've done it before. It's fun. Okay, with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.
I'm going to be at the U.S. Conference of Mayors on June 3rd or 2nd? June 2nd, right?
June 2nd.
Okay.
Well, Christina, we may have a issue with the June 2nd date.
Yeah, I'm going to be at U.S. Conference of Mayors in Reno.
Okay, we'll look into it and propose a different date if that's okay.
Okay, that's great.
We just need 3 of us. If Teresa, Lamar, and myself show up, we carry it unless there's something really big on there.
Yeah, I'll be on the East Coast by the 5th, so it's Friday. Yeah, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So
we will figure it out. Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.
Okay, thank you.